On this video, we're doing a plant tour. Is that how you do it? I've moved things, I've cleared old plants away, I've gotten rid of plants that I just, don't really want anymore. And that's exactly what we're gonna be talking about in this video. I'm gonna go through everything that you're seeing behind me, even the stuff that you can't see. It's an upcoming project. It's my biggest project that I've ever done, to be honest with you. It's very daunting. I just ordered the light from a place called Spectral Designs to sit on top of that thing yesterday. I'm super excited. I'm actually super excited to build that thing with you. But before we get to all those exciting projects, I thought that it'd be a good time to just kind of go through the plant room to talk about everything that we've got going on back here. I needed a chill week because I've been planning this big project behind me. The things that you don't see, the things that I guess don't know how to capture on camera is all of the in-between kind of planning stuff that goes into something like that. That's a 36 by 18 by 36 terrarium. So number one, I had to get the terrarium. Number one, I've got to get all the wood. I don't even have all the wood. And I just realized that I'm jumping ahead and I'm not going to do that. Are we off to a decent start? So the first plant that we're going to talk about is our ZZ plant. If you're a houseplant person, I'm assuming you probably picked up a ZZ plant because I saw them like literally everywhere. It's a pretty slow grower, but it just does kind of continually grow. You see that? A little bit of growth right there and all these light leaves in here, of course. Up next is the Ming Aurelia that I've had sitting on that shelf over there. There was a bit of a fight back when I repotted this plant once. In one way, I want to trim this top part off and just kind of, let the bottom part explode again into sort of a bushy plant. But on the other way, I've got it in this really cool Japanese pot, and I just kind of like the almost beanstalky look. Let's talk about that one later. Let's move past that one quickly. I think we'll talk about what is this? A white wizard alocasia. I'm just going completely off memory with the names of these plants, so if I get anything wrong, I apologize. I might in the editing, go through and actually verify the names of these plants, but to be honest with you, I probably won't even do that. See that little sprout down there? See that leaf? It keeps doing interesting things like that. It probably will graduate from the bottom of this shelf at some point. Moving on to the next item on the bottom of the shelf is my, what do you call this one? I think it's a Hindu rope Hoya. Anyways, this rope Hoya is one of those ones that I got right in the beginning. It sat out on the porch for a long time. It actually didn't give me any growth for a while. Since I put it down in that shelf under one of those little grow lights there, it has started to do its thing. And now we move on to my one and only bonsai purchase. I paid a lot of money for this bonsai. I'm not gonna say how much I paid for it. You'll have to go back and dig through my videos and find out. Now over here I've got a kokedama that I made on this channel with you. I don't know, for whatever reason, maybe I packed it too tight. I did kind of think when I made this kokedama that I packed it a little tight on the video and everything like that. But for whatever reason, I just don't think it's growing nearly as good as its other ginseng brother that I got at the exact same time. They were about the exact same size. So next, we'll move really quick. I've got I think it's called a creeping philodendron. I've completely fallen out of love with moss poles except for two circumstances. And one is this creeping philodendron. It just wants to, creep around and crawl all over things, but it's a philodendron. What do we have next? I think this is called a porcelain flower Hoya. And I wish I had filmed this like a month ago because it actually had these beautiful little porcelain flowers right there and there and there. Maybe I got it on a previous video. But right in here we've got a gold crested false Aurelia is what it's called. And it's, it's kind of doing its thing. It's losing a few leaves at the bottom. We've got my Swedish ivy plant, which I just love this plant. It's one of the first ones that I ever got too. And you can see a little bit when it gets too much sun, its leaves turn just like a really vibrant, bright yellow, kind of like that one. What I usually do is I just pick those ones off. Next up, right on top, we've got our snake plant. It sprouts up these little babies, just like you can kind of see peeking behind over there. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those cool plants that adds a lot of neat texture against the wall. Now while we're talking about the wall, let me move over to this one right here. This is an elkhorn fern. I enjoy the way that it kind of makes the wall look over there. And to be honest with you, it makes me want to have more ferns kind of mounted on the walls. I almost want to take, my entire fern collection and mount them on the wall. And if I ever find like the perfect slices of wood or something like that to actually do it, I probably will. Let me move back over here to the paludarium. There's a few things that I want to say about this. Number one, I've got a plant floating over here. So I used to have a lot of water lettuce floating on the surface here, and I just kind of felt like it blocked out a lot of the light. It didn't let me really see the fish. It didn't really let the plants down here get any light, and it just kind of made everything look a little boggy and mucky. So I actually took out all of that water lettuce, except for a few little scraps that you can see over there. And it's really brightened up the entire tank, except for the fact that the fish have now been hiding out for the past few days. And we're going to talk about the fern corner, although I have moved some things around and there's a few non-ferns in the fern corner. Let's actually start with those ones just so we can get them out of the way. And of course I'm going to save the big beauty that you're witnessing behind me, that you witnessed in the background of all of my videos. I'm going to save that one for probably the last of the fern corner. This one is a Song of India, Dracaena, and it used to be like this. I've actually never seen any growth, and in fact the only growth I ever saw, I guess it just doesn't like me or something. It got real crispy ends real quick. This plant just doesn't really seem to grow, so what I did is I did a little experiment on it. I pulled off all of the leaves. You're on very thin ice, and you may get kicked out of the plant room in the next purge unless you start doing something that interests me. I accidentally sucked pieces of this leaf off the other day with the shop vacuum when I was cleaning the plant room. You get the vacuum a little too close to these leaves, and then before you know it, it's sucking little chunks off there. It was a complete accident, so I kind of demolished this plant. It is showing a little bit of promise. It's got a brand new leaf coming up here in the center. We're almost going to have to change the battery on this GoPro. The one thing that I've learned about these GoPros is the battery lasts like absolutely no time. So I had this plant sitting on the porch all summer long, and just when I thought I had it growing perfectly, I brought it in for the winter and all that thing, and I ended up repotting this on one of the videos just because I think I needed the pot that it was living in before. And then since then it's just been kind of getting in here and dropping all of its bottom leaves off again. But you know what's the best thing about this plant is it always turns back around. Let's jump behind the big fern tree. Before we get to that one, I want to talk about my foxtail fern right here. I was on a beach trip with my family. I saw this foxtail fern growing just wild outside. At the time I didn't know what the name of it was. So I took a picture of it. I figured out what it was called. I scoured the greenhouses near my area, and I finally found one in a small town called Concord. And it was just kind of sitting off in the corner. I know it sounds a little dreamy. Next up we'll go to the granddaddy. I'm not even going to talk too much about this one because it's my staghorn fern. And I had to take this one out. If you've watched my videos for a long time, you know that I had made something called the big clay fern forest in that corner. And I just ran out of room for it. It had all of my ferns and everything in it, so I had to take them out. I had to separate them into pots. That's the one new thing that you're seeing with this plant tour video. I've got an empty aquarium right under there waiting off, doing what it's doing, just for whenever I get inspired to do a cool aquarium project. We've got my crocodile fern or crocodilian fern or something weird like that. Let me pick this one up maybe. This is another one that was sort of living in that big clay fern forest that I had for a while. And to be honest with you, it never really took to having water sprayed over it all the time. So it's not looking too great. But the coolest thing about this fern is just that crocodilian texture that you get from it. I mean, how cool is that stuff? Over here is the bird's nest fern. It's wild, it's just doing its thing. Look, we got a little bit of new growth right in the center there. And it sort of sprouts out kind of like a cabbage or something, and it's really slow growing. And that's all I got to say about that. It's just a cool flippin' fern. So let's put it back and let it do its thing. Let's take a little break from ferns and talk about this watermelon peperomia. It's just a good plant. Maybe I'll end up putting this watermelon peperomia in this big terrarium over there that I've kind of been hinting at this whole video because it's a project. But where are we at? We've moved off ferns for a minute. Let's move over to this little curlicue. I just want to kind of give you a nice up close of that. This is one of those plants that has never really done too good. It looked really good when it came to me. It was like big and just had all these cool curly things and everything like that. But then most of it died away. I clipped it all off. I've debated throwing this plant out multiple times, but every time I think about throwing it out, I see one of those little babies kind of popping out of the top there, and I just feel like giving it a little bit more time. So I don't even know what the name of this one is, but it's my curly Q plant and I love it. Okay, now before we jump back to ferns, we're gonna jump over to something that I missed in the first place. It doesn't need too much to be said about it, but this is just a really cool geometric terrarium that I found. One of the best things about having a plant room like this is to have little things like that sitting over in the corner. Little things like that aquarium waiting back there by the ferns. Just projects that are kind of waiting to happen. Because to be honest with you, I've done it both ways. I'm working on this giant, rainforest terrarium that we're going to be building. I've been ordering things. I've been collecting everything that I need. I've been talking to a person about doing custom lighting. I've been debating on, what plants do I put in there? What animals do I put in there? I've run into some problems with the previous terrarium that I built over there. So I've been debating on how I'm going to address all of those with that bigger terrarium over there. And it's, in a way, it's an exciting process. It's really fun to go through. You're digging around, you're spending all sorts of money, you're buying stuff, you're buying plants, you're doing, it's a lot of fun. But in a lot of ways, it's also a lot of fun to just be able to have a spark one morning and to think, you know what, I want to build a terrarium today. And you've got something sitting like that cool looking thing down over there. And you've got all the supplies. You've got a little bit of wood in the garage. You've got some plants ready to go. I think that all of us creators, we just love having something like that. We love having multiple things like that, sitting in the background somewhere, just waiting for us to fill it with something when the mood strikes. Anyways, back to ferns. Okay, so now we're going to talk about my rabbit's foot fern. I'll show you some of its rabbit's feet because that's what it's particularly known for. Make sure my underwear is not sticking out of my pants on the video here the whole time. Last video I made, I had to edit out all sorts of stuff because my underwear was sticking out. So before we go any further, of course I've got to step to the side and I've got to, let Her Majesty display herself in the corner. This is my fern tree. It's the thing that everybody comments on. It's the thing that everybody says, wow, what a beautiful fern tree in the back of your videos. And I agree. I want to show you another sacrifice that I have to make every single night when I'm, turning down the lights in the plant room here. I come up here, I crawl under the fronds, just like this, and I have to reach all the way back here. Can you see me reaching? I have to basically get under the old fern tree, and then I click that light off. That's in the background over there. It's not connected to any timers or anything. It's got some weird thing on it, so I actually can't connect that light to a timer. It bugs me a little bit, but I kind of enjoy the fact that it makes me crawl under the great fern tree every night to turn the light off. It's just one of those habits you kind of enjoy having, you know what I'm saying? But overall, I think this tour is shaping up pretty well. To be honest with you, I'm going to take a little bit of a break. The cameras keep shutting off on me, saying that they're too hot. So I'm going to give the cameras a bit of a relax, especially the GoPro. Isn't the GoPro meant to be like on a mountain bike in the desert or something like that in 130 degree weather? And why is it telling me that in my little plant room back here that it's too hot to keep running? I don't know. Who knows what's going on with all that? And here's the bookshelf without any interruption besides my hand, which I'm taking out right now so you can get a good glimpse. I'm going to start with the very bottom one that's kind of hiding here. This is called a day lily, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not mistaken. And sometimes you just plant a pot that looks beautiful in the pot that you put it in. And even this one, which is kind of starting to outgrow it, it's been shooting babies out all over the place. I'm getting a little bit sad to have to move this thing. Anyways, that's pretty much all I got to say about the daylily. Coming up next, we've got the waffle plants. I'm gonna pull the little Snow White waffle plant out here just real quickly because this one doesn't, I don't even know if it's really grown for me at all. This one over here, on the other hand, is a plant. I love this plant. The thing that I love about this plant is that it's really high moisture. So it wants its soil to be really moist all of the time. And as soon as I let this soil dry out, even the least bit, these little leaves, they start frowning, they start drooping down. It's really sad. This plant almost looks dead when it's gone without water for like one day. But then you put it in the shower, you get it all watered up, you soak it back to life, and then the next thing you know, it just kind of, springs back into life. And that's what I love about this waffle plant, is that when I don't love it, it shows me, it gives me the real guilt trip. And then when I do love it again, when I give it some water, it just springs right back to life. I think next up, we're gonna stay on this bottom shelf right here, I want to talk about these two plants right here. This is my jade plant, and this is my miniature, my dwarf jade plant. So next up, we'll talk about this terrarium right here. This is the terrarium that I made on this channel again. When I first put this terrarium together, this purple passion plant back here, it reached all the way to the top of this thing. And I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out, but eventually I just kind of clipped that thing down right near the bottom. It gave this air plant down here a little bit of a chance to breathe. And you know, this purple passion plant has been sprouting these new leaves down here. I'll even give you a little look into the top. I spray this thing probably once a week or so. But speaking about terrariums, let's move over to the diamond terrarium right here. So the thing about this terrarium right here is that this ficus pumila in here, it just really likes to take over. It likes to crawl up this kind of twisting branch, and it likes to pretend that it's actually part of that tree back there. But it's not, because this is actually a, what do you call it? Like a Fukian key, is I think what it's actually called. And I just noticed a tiny little mushroom right in the back too. How cool is that? So coming up next, we're going to be talking about my carnivorous shelf, which is sort of going mediocre. This is my pitcher plant. And this pitcher right here is the biggest staying pitcher that I've ever seen. I want to try and give you, it's about the size of my thumb, to be honest with you. I don't have a huge thumb. Talk real quick about this little cactus arrangement that I've got going on back here. Towards the top, it's a little bit more light green, and actually all of that is new growth. You can even see a ton of little babies going on back here. But now let's move on to the next terrarium, the terrarium that I got a lot of criticism about, which was the carnivorous capsule terrarium. We've got a Venus flytrap sitting over there on the side. We've got, I don't remember the names of all of these carnivorous plants, but we've got one right there. But the criticism that I got on this terrarium is basically that it wasn't the proper way to grow these carnivorous plants. For instance, this pitcher plant right in the front apparently needs like a cold season where it basically goes dormant. It doesn't, you know, constantly eat. It's not living in constant humidity and all that sort of thing, as well as the other carnivorous plant that was living in that back corner. And I will admit this, that multiple people told me that this terrarium wasn't going to work. But other than that, I mean, the Dracaeras right there, they're doing great. And I mean, the moss is doing great. This Venus flytrap seems to be doing okay back here. I mean, it's not a total loss. I'm just not having a whole lot of luck with a couple of these plants in here. Let's jump over to this plant right here. This is called a ruby cascade. I think it's a peperomia variety of some sort. And I love this plant just because, you know, it's long and it just kind of looks delicate. I don't like messing with the strands too much. This is the first terrarium that I built on this channel. And I put all sorts of different kinds of mosses in there. I put some sphagnum moss that's kind of growing out of control. It was my first mossy wall terrarium. And I don't know, this thing is just perfect. It's really low maintenance. I spray it maybe once a month or so. So this is called a Rex begonia. Someone the other day on Facebook told me it was called a Cissus discolor, and they were very impressed that my leaves were still on. They must be talking about how these leaves dry out in the winter, because these leaves are super, super dry and brittle. And I don't know, this is one of those weird plants that just kind of, it doesn't look great. It doesn't look like it's doing amazing, but it does have a ton of growth. Like it grows all the time. Okay, we're going to go a little bit fast for the next few. We've got our spider plant right here. I just love this one. I'm seeing all sorts of new growth right in here. This is called a ripple jade, and I'm actually not a huge fan of the ripple jade plant just because, I don't know, just not a huge fan of it. So this one I actually showed you earlier in the video when I compared it to the kokedama. And I think what I'm going to be doing with both of these plants is I think they're probably going to be one of the candidates that ends up in the big rainforest terrarium that we're going to be building over here. We've got, which I think is called our burrow's tail. It's a little delicate, these little nodules, these little lumps. They're always falling off the little stems, and it just annoys me so much every time I knock one off, because what ends up happening is you get stuff like that. But the real reason that I put this burrow's tail beside this other terrarium right here is because the color I just thought matched absolutely perfectly. And let me take a step back to just show you how perfectly the colors match? Like, doesn't the colors of that and that match just perfectly? Okay, so for this one, I'll bring it over to the camera. This is my pink princess philodendron. I'm actually debating on taking this pink princess, I don't know, maybe the entire side of the bookshelf and just, you know, let it see how far it goes with that. We have a couple more on top. I've got my blue Cebu pothos. This one actually is, this is my longest plant. And this is a really cool plant too. I just love how it adds kind of the vining effect to the side of the shelf here. I think this is another one. I think this is another one that's going to be a candidate for at least having a clipping or two in the big rainforest terrarium that we're creating back here. Here's a plant that I don't really love quite as much, even though it's kind of Dr. Seussy. This is what's called a Tweedledee begonia. At least that's what it was sold to me as. And this is a high humidity plant. I almost would consider this for the big terrarium that we're going to build, except for the fact that I just don't really love how kind of big and massive it looks. And it just honestly narrowly skirted the purge of the last group of plants when I came in here and just got rid of all the ones that I didn't want anymore. So I'm still holding on to this one for the time being, but nonetheless. Right back here, hiding in the corner. Oh. Whew. We've got our white wizard philodendron. It's kind of doing its vining thing that philodendrons do. They just seem a little bit wild to me. They just seem like they want to kind of grow up and do their thing and climb all over stuff and vine up walls. And to be honest with you, I'd love to do more with philodendrons like that. So we've got my Florida Ghost philodendron. I love this plant so much. It's probably, I want to say this is, no. I was going to say it's my favorite. My favorite is obviously the big fern tree back there, but this is my second favorite. This is my favorite philodendron. So without further ado, let's move on to what I think is going to be the most exciting part of the video, and that is going to be the future projects, the things that are noodling around in my head right now. I'm almost scared to share, you know, what's going on in my head because it changes so rapidly that I'm not going to talk about the closet in this video because it's just basically, well, let's talk about it. It's just basically a huge old mess. And I don't know, maybe we'll make a video about organizing the plant room closet. But to be honest with you, I've been sort of outgrowing this room faster than I've been wanting to make videos about reorganizing the tiny little spaces. This is the future stuff. This is the stuff that I've been planning in my head. This is the stuff that's been happening. This is the stuff that honestly I've been spending a little too much money on. I've got a lot of work to do still. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to black out the edges like I did on this terrarium right here to make it a little bit more professional. And then while I'm over here, I want to point out one of the issues that I've been having with this terrarium is leaking. I don't know if you can see that in the sunlight, but I've got, you know, a bunch of water kind of leaking out of the corners. In fact, water leaks out of all the corners of this terrarium. What's actually happening is that there's condensation that's building up on that side glass over there. And then the way that these terrariums are shipped is they're shipped in like a flat box. So you've got this part as one piece, and then all of these glass panels that are up here, they're just in separate pieces. They come in like a stack, and then you assemble it all together. So all of these little seams, all of these little ridges right in here, I mean, none of that is sealed up. And basically when condensation builds up on the side of the terrarium here, it kind of leaks down to the side, or it leaks down to this little alley right here, and it ends up just kind of spilling out down here and creating leaks, just like you're seeing with the water right on this corner here. So that's one major thing that I've actually been battling with this terrarium right here. But I've still got a lot of things to do on this terrarium over here. I ordered a custom light the other day from the same place that I actually got this little 12 by 12 canopy that I've got sitting on top of the other terrarium here. And the reason that I love Spectral Designs lighting is just because it's so balanced. It's perfect. It's got the perfect amount of blue. It's got the perfect amount of reds and whites and cool whites and warm whites and all that stuff. And I just really love the way that this light's been working on this smaller terrarium. So I got a bigger one for that one that's actually going to sit in the middle of this grid right up here. And we'll see how that works out, because the new light that I actually ordered is sort of like it's sort of a big boy light for the big boy terrariums over there. It's got two big 30-watt spotlights in the middle of it. And hopefully we're going to be able to get light nicely spread from the top of this terrarium all the way down. I'm not expecting, you know, but if you didn't see that previous terrarium build, go watch it, because we're moving on to this one right now. I want to pop the lid open. This is my morning gecko terrarium build, and I'm not sure Usually in the midday, it's a little bit tough to find the geckos in here, despite the fact that I've been dealing with a lot of moisture issues and, you know, the condensation and the leaking and all that sort of thing. I mean, everything is really taking off pretty well. I mean, look at these dragon's tongue plants just kind of sticking out there. They seem to be growing really well. All of that is brand new. All of that just sprouted out since I've built this thing 2-3 weeks ago, and we've even got another little tiny one sprouting out right in there. I had to dial in the waterfall a lot because when I first set this up, I didn't have any sort of a valve or anything like that to restrict the water flow. I went in here, I'm not going to open it up, but I put a ball valve on the pump back there in order to kind of, you know, restrict the flow and turn it into, you know, just this soft, subtle little drip. See that? But the special thing about this terrarium so far is that if I sit here and I watch it, you know, just like that, and I'm patient, and usually I'll sit on a chair or something, and I'll lean in, you can move around a little bit, but if I sit here for a long time, and I'm talking a long time, well, if I stare at it for long enough, I'll usually see something pretty cool. Like the other day, I saw one of the morning geckos in that terrarium over there. It shed its entire skin, so I literally watched it kind of shed the skin off its body, and then I thought that was going to be it. Instead, it just consumed the whole thing. It literally downed its entire skin, but not only did it down its entire skin, it downed it all in one bite. I even had a problem with the morning geckos escaping every single night. See those little hoops sitting back in there? There's a little hoop that connects to the lid. There must be some tiny little open space in there. I'd come in here in the morning and I'd lift this up like that, and I'd see a little smiling gecko face just looking back at me. But nonetheless, I had to figure out a way to stop them from escaping. And the way I did that was by sealing up with tape all of the little edges everywhere that I could. I put toilet paper in all of the little holes and cracks that I could find, and then I covered that up with tape. And that was the best way that I could find to make a morning gecko escape-proof terrarium. And I've got a little kind of bonus corner waiting right here by the door. I just want to go through some of these plants. Some of them are OGs. So first and foremost, I'm going to start with the ones on the bottom. This is my tiny dancer. Look what I did to it in the last water, and I cracked it a little bit. I've been trying to be a little bit more gentler with this tiny dancer plant right here. What I'm going to get into is this philodendron right here. This deja vu philodendron, if I'm calling it correctly. I've had a bit of issues with it. Lately it's been kind of... Over here is a creeping philodendron. I think I mentioned a creeping philodendron over there, and I think that's actually some sort of like a heart philodendron. And this one is the actual creeping philodendron, and I want to show you why, because look at all the creepiness. I think it's like Toy Story, where these little vines are just crawling all over the place. I almost want to place cameras and watch them just kind of move, catch them. Look at how creepy they are. They creep all the way down to the bottom there. Hey, while we're down at the bottom, let me talk about this. Chinese money plant is the common name. It's got some little babies going on. It's an okay plant. I like it okay. I hate when they get mature because they get too fragile. I don't know. I don't really like that plant, to be honest with you. The plant that I do like is this one right here, which is what I call like a string bean peperomia. This might be another candidate. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is going to be another candidate for one of the ones that I just kind of pop into this terrarium back here. Like I said, I'm going to go through this plant room, and I'm really enjoying the process of consolidating stuff. So, okay, next up is what I used to call the Song of India, but what I actually think is called the Song of Jamaica, or what I call it is just another dragon tree or a dracaena. It's one of my favorite plants. I've had it for a long time. It's really grown a lot. And way over here in the corner, we've got the OG. We've got my first house plant ever. This is my Swiss cheese vine, commonly known. There's one more place in this plant room that I've got to show you before we can officially end this full plant tour. This is the full plant tour of everything that I've got in the plant room. I think I've done it all. I talked about my ZZ plant in the first place. I've gone through all of this. I'm pretty sure I remember speaking about each of these individually. I think I've given them all enough of their time. And then last but not least, we're going to move over to the shelf right in front of the window. This apparently, sort of like a Monstera deliciosa, is apparently going to turn into like a really cool, it's going to have like dragon leaves. But so far I've just kind of seen all these juvenile leaves coming off of it. This one's a little special to me because both these leaves that you're seeing, both of these magnificent leaves, it's kind of a weird plant because it's a high humidity plant, but it also likes a lot of sunlight. So it wants to be high humidity, but it also wants to be like, blasted with sun all the time. And I think I've finally, right by the window, seems to be where this alocasia Sabrina likes it most. Got some sort of a weird begonia. I don't even remember the name, but I just thought it looked so flippin' weird. This is my taco leaf plant over here. I've had good luck and bad luck with it. When I first got it, it was almost dead. I rescued it. That was the entire tour. I think I covered every plant. Let's see. Yep, I got those ones. I got that entire shelf. I talked about the paludarium. I talked about the big fern tree. We went through the carnivorous. I don't think we talked about the moss buckets on the bottom. I'm not sure if I'm gonna talk about the moss buckets on the bottom. I went through the front corner with some of my most favorite plants, including the OG. But that was the first houseplant I ever got. It was the thing that got me into houseplants. I bought it as an outdoor plant, and then people were telling me online, you've got to take that thing in for the winter. So I started researching on, well, how do I take plants in for the winter and that sort of thing. And that Swiss cheese plant, growing up that wall, it birthed this. This is where I get to spend my time, not too shabby. This is where I get to spend my time, not too shabby.